There's a moment when the body releases air for the final time. It slips out like a sigh after a long journey. A release so subtle that it feels less like an ending and more like an opening. The kind of pause you hear between waves on a midnight shore. That breath carries with it the last rhythm of lungs that have risen and fallen uncountable times since birth. You do not count breaths in life, but they number in the hundreds of millions, each one an exchange between the air around you and the deep rivers of blood flowing within you. With this final exhale, the exchange ceases, the gates close. Lungs, soft and branching, like forests of airways, no longer draw oxygen in the heart, which has pulsed tirelessly, sending blood through nearly 60,000 miles of vessels, begins to slow. Paused willingly. Even in sleep it has worked. Now its last beats drift into stillness. When the heart no longer pushes blood, every organ feels the change. The brain, hungry for oxygen more than any other organ, is the first to notice. In life, neurons fire, with tiny sparks, forming thought, memory, sensation. Each spark relies on oxygen arriving at the right moment. Without it, the neurons dim within minutes, like stars fading when the dawn arrives. It may feel startling to think of this shutting down. It is. The body completing a cycle. The last breath is not a collapse, but a surrender to physics and biology. The cessation of motion in a system designed for flow. Imagine a great orchestra playing a symphony for decades. Every instrument in harmony, each section following the rhythm of the conductor. At some point, the conductor lowers the baton for the final time. One instrument rests, then another, until the hall is filled not with abrupt silence, but with the resonance of a note still hanging in the air. This is the stillness of the body after breath ends, a transition, not a void. It is defined by the stop of breathing and circulation. Yet, within the body, activity continues. Cells have reserves, tiny stores of energy, like lamps flickering after the main current has been cut. Their fading is the story that comes next. As air leaves, carbon dioxide lingers. In life, the lungs release this waste gas with every breath. Without exhalation, carbon dioxide begins to build. The blood grows more acidic, a shift so subtle at first, but profound in effect. Enzymes, those molecular machines that rely on balance, begin to lose their shape. Reactions slow. The skin, still warm from the furnace of metabolism, holds the memory of circulation. Within minutes, warmth no longer flows outward from the heart. That will stretch across hours. For now, the surface still carries the echo of life. If you close your eyes and imagine this moment, it is not frightening, but vast. Like standing on a shoreline where waves have fallen silent. The air is still, but the ocean remains. For centuries, people have described the last breath with reverence. In some traditions, it is said to carry the soul outward. In others, it is the release of the spirit into the surrounding air. Science offers another perspective. The final exhalation is the body returning air to the environment, the same air it once borrowed with its first breath. From first inhale to last exhale, life is a cycle of exchange. Mediators between you and the atmosphere. When that dialogue ends, it does not erase the conversation. The breath that leaves the body joins the currents of the room, drifts upward, disperses, merges with larger streams of wind. In a way, it continues on. Inside, the silence of the heart marks a shift in time. Without its beat, the cadence of life changes. The sound that carried you through dreams and days, the pulse that was background music to every thought, every step, now subsides. Yet, even as it stops, it passes rhythm to other processes. Muscles feel the lack of circulation first. Deprived of oxygen and glucose, they lose their steady supply of energy molecules, called ATP. In life, ATP fuels contraction, relaxation, every small adjustment. Without it, muscles can no longer maintain softness. They will stiffen in hours to come, but for now, they rest. Within seconds of the heart's last push, neurons begin to dim. But the brain is vast, and billions of cells linger. They whisper faint signals for minutes longer. Some scientists have recorded electrical activity even after breath and pulse have ceased. Has set this sparks questions. Does consciousness linger in these final signals, or are they simply echoes, waves rolling after the wind has passed? The answer remains open and perhaps unknowable, but for a bedtime reflection, it is enough to know that the brain's immense symphony does not end all at once. It tapers, fades, drifts. So here, in this first chapter, the story is not of decay, but of transition. The body rests between motion and stillness, between exhale and quiet. If you could float through the body at this moment, you would see organs pausing like machines switched off, yet glowing faintly with residual power. The liver, the kidneys, the stomach, each slowing, each holding onto stored energy that will soon be used in different ways. And though the body is no longer aware, it remains a place of potential destruction, but transformation. What has been called death is not an abrupt vanishing. It is the beginning of a series of shifts that unfold with their own rhythm. Oxygen loss leads to chemical change of color. Microbial partners awaken to new roles. The last breath is the threshold. Beyond it lies the slow unwinding of life into matter. And so you rest here at the doorway. The air has left the lungs. The heart has eased. The brain has dimmed. The stillness holds. Yet even as the breath fades, the cells inside remain alive for a time. They flicker on, continuing their work in silence, waiting for their own moment to release into the fading light of the microscopic world within you, into the quieting of cells that once carried the spark of your being. Imagine standing on a hillside at night. Below you stretches a vast city, alive with glowing windows. Each light is a cell, each spark a tiny life within your body. Now, one by one, those lights begin to fade. Not all at once, but in waves, like neighborhoods darkening as midnight deepens. This is what happens inside after the last breath. Every cell is its own small universe, a soft-walled chamber filled with fluid, structures, and endless motion. For as long as the body breathes, oxygen fuels these inner worlds. The gas slips from lungs into blood, from blood into cells, feeding a chain of reactions that release energy. Energy not in flames, but in small, invisible sparks, carried in molecules called ATP. ATP is the cell's currency. With it, muscles contract, nerves signal, proteins fold into shapes that sustain life. Without oxygen, this currency stops flowing. The cell's bank closes, the lights dim. At first, cells try to survive. They switch to older methods of making energy, primitive pathways that existed long before oxygen was common on Earth. Glycolysis, a way of breaking sugar without air. But this path is costly and limited. Like burning scraps of wood when coal is gone, it produces little fuel and leaves behind lactic acid. The cell becomes more acidic, its environment less stable. Neurons in the brain fade quickly, their dependence on oxygen absolute. But other cells, like those in the skin or bone, linger longer. Some endure hours before surrendering. Each has its own clock shaped by how much oxygen it needs and what reserves it holds. Envision this not as collapse, but as dusk, a slow fading of light across different landscapes. The brain darkens like a city's heart where skyscrapers once glowed. The muscles dim more slowly, suburban blocks switching off in turn. The skin, the bones, the nails, they are the last lamps along the far edge of the horizon. As the energy dwindles, structures inside the cells begin to shift. The membranes that hold everything together weaken. Enzymes, once tightly controlled, drift free. Some begin to digest parts of the cell itself. This is the beginning of self-dissolution, a process called autolysis, though the full unraveling belongs to later stages. For now, it is the first whisper of breakdown. Inside the mitochondria, those tiny power plants fall silent. In life, they transform oxygen into streams of energy, releasing molecules that keep the cell alive. Without oxygen, they stall, their walls leak. They spill signals that tell the cell it cannot continue. The cell is not designed for eternity. It knows how to live and how to stop. In its final moments, it follows a script written in chemistry. Proteins misfold, DNA unwinds, channels close. Like books returning to the shelf at the end of a long day. And yet, if you step back, you see the beauty in this order. Trillions of cells, each one completing its cycle, each one contributing to the larger silence that follows death. It is not chaos. It is a pattern, a gradual unwinding that has occurred for every living creature across time. The fading of cells also marks a change in balance. In life, the immune system patrols constantly, clearing away debris, repairing damage, guarding against invaders. Without energy, the immune system ceases. For the first time, there are no defenses. The body is open, a landscape soon to be touched by other forms of life. But in this moment, the focus is still inward. Within the city of cells, the power lines have gone dark, the traffic has slowed, the signals have ceased. Some cells hold on longer, and because of this, the body is not a uniform field of death. There are places still alive, even as others have dimmed. Fingernails, hair roots, surface layers of skin. These may continue for hours, even days, like embers glowing at the edges of a fire long extinguished. Think of the paradox. The person has died, yet parts of the body are still alive. Not as a whole being, not with thought or breath, but with individual sparks of life. This twilight zone of existence blurs the line between the living and the no longer living. It is here that time begins to matter differently. For a forensic scientist, these varying rates of cellular survival become clues. They reveal windows of time. They whisper of when the final breath occurred. But for you, drifting in thought, they are simply part of the story. The way different lamps go out in different rooms, each at its own pace. As hours pass, the shift in chemistry deepens. Carbon dioxide continues to rise. Acidity spreads. Proteins unravel like threads from fabric. The scaffolding that holds cells in shape collapses. Membranes break. Fluid seeps into surrounding spaces. This is not destruction for its own sake. It is release. The stored materials of the cell, sugars, salts, enzymes, spill outward, making the body ready for the transformations to come. The quieting of cells is the first act of returning. From the outside, the body still looks unchanged. Stillness on the surface hides the microscopic unraveling beneath. But within, trillions of small lights have gone out. The city has dimmed. What remains is potential. For in the absence of cellular activity, other processes will rise. Without energy flow, circulation cannot continue. Blood that once surged now settles. This settling will paint the body in shades of twilight, a canvas shaped by gravity and time. And so the story prepares to move outward, from the city of cells to the rivers of blood that once carried life to them, from the microscopic to the visible, from inner fading to outward stillness. The cells have dimmed, the city has gone dark, and now attention turns to the silent rivers that once flowed with unending rhythm. Rivers of blood that once surged with life are now unmoving. Imagine standing on a bridge above a vast current, only to see the water halted midstream. No ripples, no flow, only stillness stretching into distance. This is the body's bloodstream. After the last beat of the heart, for as long as breath and pulse endured, blood carried warmth to every corner of you. It spread heat to skin, to muscles, to organs hidden deep within. With motion gone, that warmth no longer spreads. It begins to slip away, like the glow of coals after fire has passed. The process has a name in science, algor mortis, the cooling of the body after death. It is not sudden. It follows a rhythm, a steady descent toward balance with the air around you. At first, the body resists. The skin still holds heat. The core remains warmer than the surface. But without circulation, without the push of blood to carry warmth outward, the body surrenders its temperature to the environment. Think of a cup of tea left on a table. At first it steams, holding heat within its liquid. Over time, the steam fades. The warmth drifts outward until the tea is the same temperature as the room. The body is much the same. In life, warmth is a signature of motion. Every cell produces heat as it burns fuel. Muscles create it when they contract. The liver, ever working, is a furnace in the center. The blood collects this heat and delivers it everywhere. But now, with no flow, warmth becomes uneven. The skin cools first, exposed to air, while the inner core lingers warmer for hours. Scientists often measure this cooling to estimate time of death. The loss follows a curve. In the first hour, the drop is small. Later, it becomes faster, then slower again as the body approaches equilibrium with the world outside. But this is not a harsh process. It is a blending. The body returning its heat to the air, the bed, the soil. Imagine lying in a meadow as night falls. The warmth of the day still clings to the earth. As darkness deepens, that warmth escapes into the open sky. By dawn, ground and air are one. The cooling of the body is like this. a slow merging with the atmosphere. The stillness of blood adds another transformation. Without flow, gravity takes hold. Blood, once in constant circulation, now settles. It drifts downward into the lowest parts of the body, the skin. Above grows paler, while the areas beneath fill with darker shades. This settling is called livor mortis, the coloring of still blood. It does not happen all at once. At first, the patterns shift if the body is moved, as liquid still flows with position. Later, as hours pass, the colors fix. They become part of the record, a map of time and position. Think of a river cut off from its source. The water pools in the bends, collects in the lowlands, leaving other stretches dry. The same occurs here. Blood, without its endless journey, gathers in valleys shaped by posture and gravity. From the outside, you may not see all these changes at once. The cooling, the settling, the paling of skin. But beneath the surface, the landscape is shifting. Warmth disperses, circulation fades into patterns of stillness, and the body becomes less like a flowing system and more like a vessel at rest. Forensic science reads these changes as clues to those who study the body. The cooling curve and the patterns of livor mortis offer windows into the passage of time. But in this telling, they are part of a larger story, a natural rhythm, a body aligning itself with the environment once again. Temperature is a language the world speaks fluently. Warm air rises, cold air sinks. Ice melts in sun, water freezes in shadow. The body is subject to these same laws. Once the internal fire has gone, it follows the same path as all things cooling in the night air. Notice how this cooling shapes perception. To touch the skin hours later is to feel a temperature not of life but of surrounding air. In stories and rituals across cultures, this change has often marked the passage of a soul, the proof that spirit has left. In science, it is simply thermodynamics, energy leaving a system, dispersing into wider space. Yet there is poetry even in physics. Heat never vanishes, it only moves. The warmth of the body does not disappear into nothing. It flows outward, warming the air by a fraction, heating the bed, stirring molecules around it. That heat travels on into drafts of wind, into walls, into sky, a chain with no end. Think of the warmth of a single candle in a cold room. It softens the air close by, though you may not notice the shift far away. When the candle is gone, the warmth remains, diffused into the larger space. In this way, the body's heat becomes part of the surrounding world. Cooling also changes the body's texture. Muscles without blood warmth grow firmer. The skin feels different, less supple. This sets the stage for what comes next. For as temperature falls, chemical processes slow, and the muscles prepare to lock in place, stiffening in their final pose. And so the still rivers of blood, the fading of warmth, the cooling that spreads like night across a meadow, all lead to the next transformation. A language written not in temperature but in posture, not in flow but in stillness of form. The rivers have stopped, the warmth has slipped away, and now the muscles wait, ready to speak their final message. In the silence of rigor mortis, the body that once stretched, reached, and embraced now begins to hold still. It is as if every fiber has decided to pause, to freeze in the position left behind. The dance of motion ends, and in its place arrives a new language, written. In stiffness, this stillness has a name, rigor mortis. It is not an instant change, but a tide that rises slowly across the body, first subtle, then firm, then eventually releasing again. Muscles are storytellers of motion. They carry memory not only of strength, but of every smallest gesture. A smile, a blink, the curve of a hand. Their power comes from countless fibers woven together, each filled with tiny engines, sliding past one another. These sliding filaments, actin and myosin, are the machinery of contraction. They need energy, fed by ATP, to move and to relax. When the heart no longer pumps, when oxygen no longer flows, ATP is no longer made. Muscles still try to hold their form, but without energy they cannot release their grip. Actin and myosin lock in place, not because they choose to, but because the key to their relaxation is missing. Imagine two dancers, frozen mid-embrace, their hands clasped, unable to let go, because the music has stopped and the stage lights have gone out. That is what happens inside every fiber. A frozen embrace, a stillness that was once motion. Rigor mortis begins within a few hours, often first felt in the smaller muscles, the eyelids, the jaw, the fingers. Then it spreads across the arms, the torso, the legs. Within 12 hours, the body is held firm, each limb fixed as though carved from stone. This stiffness is not permanent. The chemistry of the body continues its transformation. Enzymes begin to break down structures inside the fibers. Proteins unravel, bonds loosen. After 1 or 2 days, the muscles release again. The body softens, returning to a state of rest. In this cycle, you can see a rhythm, not unlike the rising and falling of tides, flowing from softness to stiffness and back to softness again. Rigor mortis is only a passage in that rhythm. For forensic science, this rhythm becomes a clock. The degree of stiffness reveals time. A jaw that resists movement suggests a few hours. A body rigid from head to toe suggests more. A softened form after a day or two tells of the tide receding. But for this bedtime journey, the science is less about measurement and more about the poetry of change. Think of the earth after rain. At first, the soil is soft, then it firms as water dries, then it crumbles back into looseness. Muscles follow a similar path, each stage a reflection of chemistry moving forward. The posture of the body during rigor mortis often holds a strange intimacy. Whatever position the body was left in may linger. A hand curved as though holding something, a head tilted as if in thought, a foot angled mid-step. These are not choices, but echoes, chemical locks that freeze the body in its final pose. Cultures across time have noticed this phenomenon. Ancient observers spoke of the dead appearing as if they still reached toward life. Some believed the spirit was reluctant to depart, holding the body stiff in memory of its presence. Today, we see it as biochemistry, but the impression remains hauntingly human. On a microscopic level, the stiffness is beautiful in its own way. Rows of filaments bound together, unmoving, forming a lattice of stillness. The same structures that once powered motion now form a sculpture of rest. The body becomes both architecture and art. Its muscles, like carved stone, its form a monument to its final moment. Temperature shapes the speed of this process. In warmth, rigor mortis arrives faster, fades sooner. In cold, the onset is slower, lasting longer. The chemistry responds to environment, showing again how even in death the body remains part of the landscape around it. Think of a river turning to ice. In winter's chill, the freeze holds for months. In milder air, the ice forms only thinly, breaking sooner. Muscles, like rivers, are guided by temperature's hand. There is also variation between different parts of the body. Small muscles, with less mass, stiffen quickly. Larger muscles take more time. Even within the same form, there is diversity, a layering of stiffness and release, a pattern across the landscape of flesh. Though this may sound unyielding, rigor mortis is never a final prison. It is temporary, a phase of passage. The stiffness arrives, holds, and departs. What remains afterward is not rigidity, but openness, the body entering a new stage of transformation. There is something almost ceremonial in this sequence. First breath fades, then blood stills, then warmth drifts away, and now muscles hold in place, as if bowing to mark the transition. It is a pause, a suspension between motion and dissolution. As you imagine this, think of standing in a forest where wind has stopped. The branches hold their position, leaves suspended mid-sway. Hours later, the air stirs again, and movement returns. The forest had not vanished. It was simply held in stillness for a time. So too with rigor mortis. This phase also reminds us of connection. Muscles are not separate. They are woven with tendons, bones, ligaments, all interlocked. When they stiffen, the entire frame feels it. The body is not a collection of parts, but a single system that pauses together. For those who care for the dead, this stiffness is part of their work. To lay the body, to prepare it, to place it in rest, often requires waiting until the tide of rigor has passed. Thus, the science of muscle chemistry is not only knowledge but practice, shaping how we return our loved ones to the earth. In the story of death, rigor mortis is the chapter where motion pauses. The language of muscles has shifted from action to stillness. The fibers that once lifted, carried, embraced, have spoken their final word in the language of chemistry. And, as this stiffness begins to soften, the next transformation waits. For as muscles release, blood that has settled becomes more visible. The body begins to show its colors, painted by gravity and time. The stiffness eases, the tide recedes, and the body becomes a canvas for the shades of farewell. Color arrives when silence has already settled. Not a sudden burst, but a slow unfurling, a watercolor brushed onto the canvas of skin. It is as if twilight itself drifts across the body, painting shadows where once warmth lived. This transformation is called livor mortis, the settling of blood after the flow has ceased. In life, the bloodstream is a restless river, always moving, always refreshed by the heart's beat. When that current stops, gravity claims the rivers within. Cells release their contents, and blood, no longer guided, begins to sink. What was once circulation becomes pooling, a drift downward, a quiet surrender to weight. Imagine holding a glass jar filled with red wine. Shake it, and the liquid swirls, fills every corner. Leave it on the table, and it rests at the bottom, leaving the top clear. So too does blood respond to stillness. It moves where gravity directs, leaving pale regions above and darker hues below. Within the first hours, faint blushes appear, pink at first, then deepening toward purples and blues. They are not harsh but soft gradients, feathered at the edges like clouds at dusk. As time passes, these colors spread and settle, forming maps unique to posture and position. If a body lies on its back, the shades form along the spine, the back of the arms, the weight of the legs. If turned to the side, then the side bears the shadows, while the upward surfaces remain light. It is a painting directed not by choice, but by the invisible hand of gravity. The science is precise. Red cells, heavy with iron, drift downward through vessels. They gather, pressing into the small capillaries near the skin. The more they settle, the more vivid the color becomes. This deepening is not random. It follows time. In the early hours, the color shifts when the body is moved. Turned to a new position, the shades flow again to match. But after several hours, the pigments lock in place, pressed so firmly into the tissues that they no longer shift. For investigators, this detail offers a timeline. Was the body moved? How long has it rested? But for you, listening now, the fascination lies not in evidence, but in imagery. It is the story of how nature paints, even in stillness. Think of autumn leaves scattered across the ground. At first, they can be stirred by the breeze, drifting easily. But after rain and time, they press flat against the soil, colors fixed until they fade. Blood follows a similar rhythm. First mobile, then set, then gradually altered as chemistry continues. These shades are not only science, but symbolism. Across history, cultures noticed them, giving meaning to the appearance of blues, purples, and reds. Some believed the colors showed a lingering spirit. Others thought they revealed divine judgment. Today we see them as physical truth, gravity and blood, weight and vessel. Yet the mystery remains, because the image they create is undeniably poetic. Artists might see this as watercolor on flesh. Forensic scientists see patterns and time markers. Families may see only the soft shadows of farewell. But beneath all views, the process itself is the same. The pigments also carry whispers of oxygen. Fresh blood, rich with oxygen, first appears pink. As oxygen fades, the colors deepen, taking on purples and violets. In extreme cases, even greenish or brown tones appear, iron changing form as it oxidizes. It is chemistry behaving as nature's palette, every shift of molecule creating new hues. No two bodies bear identical patterns. The canvas is shaped by posture, by clothing, by surface. Pressure against the skin leaves areas pale, as blood cannot settle where weight presses. These pale patches outline shapes, a belt, a fold, of fabric, a hand resting upon the chest. The body records not only time but touch, the imprints of its final environment. For those who study these changes, lividity becomes language. It tells where the body lay, how long it remained, whether it was moved. The colors are data, but they are also art. To look upon them is to see both science and metaphor. Picture a twilight sky, not a single color, but layers of them. Streaks of red fading to purple, then to the deepening blue of night. That is what lividity resembles. A fading of daylight across the body, a final sunset painted beneath the skin. The process usually completes within a day. Beyond that, the colors may remain, though they soften as decomposition continues. Eventually, other transformations take over, new processes painting different patterns. But lividity remains one of the earliest and most visible canvases. It is a reminder that the body is never static. Even in stillness, it changes. It moves with chemistry, with gravity, with the unseen hands of natural law. Stillness does not mean silence. It only means a new kind of movement, slower and subtler, but just as profound. To think of this before sleep is not to dwell in fear, but to notice how science itself has rhythm, how endings unfold with artistry. The body, once animated by will, now animated by gravity, still participates in nature's cycles. Every color, every shade is a farewell spoken without words. A sunset, after which another transformation begins. The still rivers have cooled. The muscles have held and released, and now the colors arrive, each stage flowing into the next, like verses of a poem that does not rush but simply continues. And soon, after these shades have finished their story, another shift begins, for color is only the surface. Beneath it, deeper changes are waiting, preparing to reveal the secret work of transformation. The colors fade into silence, and beneath the skin, a new chapter waits to be told. Life never truly belongs to you alone. From the moment of birth, countless invisible companions arrive. They settle in your mouth, your skin, your lungs, your gut. They form an entire ecosystem, a forest of microbes, each one thriving in its own small corner. For as long as you breathe, these companions live in balance with you. You feed them, and they help feed you. They digest, they protect, they shape immunity, they even influence mood and thought. A hidden partnership. And yet, in death, that partnership changes. The curtain rises on a new performance, and the microbes step into their final role. This shift is so distinct that science has given it a name, the thanatomicrobiome, the microbiome of death. The word carries both weight and poetry, a reminder that endings do not erase life but transform it. Picture a garden left untended. Once trimmed and ordered, it slowly grows wild. Roots wander, vines spread, seeds carried by wind take root in unexpected places. What was once controlled now flourishes in chaos. So too does the microbial world when your body no longer directs it. Your heart no longer pushes blood. Your immune system no longer patrols. With these defenses gone, microbes once held in check are free to wander. They begin with the places they know best, the gut, rich with food and warmth. Here, billions of bacteria flourish, multiplying rapidly, moving through tissue like explorers, crossing into new lands. They feed not on foreign matter, but on you. Proteins, fats, sugars, everything you once used for strength becomes their soil. Enzymes break down walls, releasing nutrients. Bacteria ferment, producing gases that swell and lift. What feels unsettling in thought is, in truth, the rhythm of nature reclaiming. Other microbes join them, fungi with branching filaments, weaving through tissue like roots in damp earth. They spread quietly, digesting, dissolving, breaking apart the barriers between one organ and another. In life, they were restrained by immune guards. In death, they flourish without opposition. As this invisible garden grows, patterns form. Gases create pressure, skin stretches, colors change. But beneath those outward signs lies a choreography of microbial succession. One species rises, thrives, and then declines as another takes its place. Just as in a meadow after fire, first come the pioneers, then the shrubs, then the trees. So too does this microscopic ecology unfold. Scientists trace this succession carefully. Within hours, anaerobic bacteria from the gut expand outward. Within days, soil microbes begin to colonize. Carried by air, water, insects, and earth, they join the work, layering diversity upon diversity. A body becomes a new habitat, its chemistry shifting in ways that encourage some and discourage others, and with this growth comes timing. Forensic experts study these waves of microbial bloom to measure the hours and days since death. The invisible garden keeps its own clock, far more precise than the sun and the moon. Each shift in microbial population marks a passage of time. But beyond investigation, there is wonder here. Your body, once a singular being, becomes many. A collection of lives you never see, a bloom of existence that will continue long after your voice has quieted. Imagine walking into a greenhouse at night. At first all is still, the plants dim, the air heavy. Then, slowly, flowers begin to release fragrance, leaves open, hidden seeds sprout in the dark. A silent blooming that no one commands, yet it happens all the same. That is what the Thanatomicrobium resembles. A flowering unseen by eyes, but vivid in process. This is not destruction alone. It is transformation. The work of microbes prepares the way for larger lives. Insects arrive, drawn by scent, beetles, flies, larvae. They feed, they nest, they spread, and even they are only the bridge to larger creatures, birds, and mammals that one day feed on the soil, enriched by this cycle. It all begins here, with the invisible garden. There is something humbling in realizing that death is not empty but crowded. Crowded with organisms that turn endings into beginnings. Crowded with exchanges of energy, matter, chemistry. Your body, which once carried consciousness, becomes a host for countless others to thrive. Some might see this as loss, but it is also return. For you are not separate from nature. You are woven into it. Every tree, every blade of grass, every insect under the soil, all rely on the same endless cycle. Matter breaking down, recombining, rising again in another form. The garden within does not end when it consumes, it prepares. Nutrients are released into the soil, carbon back into the air, minerals into water. Each molecule, once locked inside you, drifts outward, ready for another life to claim. It is remarkable to think that what begins as invisible ends as visible. A field of wildflowers one day nourished by bodies before. A forest strengthened by minerals released from countless cycles. A bird's feather, a fox's fur, perhaps even the roots of a tree carrying your chemistry into the sky. This invisible garden ensures that nothing is wasted. Death is not absence, but redistribution. Energy transformed, identity dissolved into greater patterns. Science studies these processes with precision, yet the poetry remains. Petri dishes reveal colonies blooming like tiny constellations. DNA sequencing uncovers entire universes of organisms coexisting within, each one with its own lineage, its own role, its own place in the cycle. What appears to us as decay is, for microbes, a great opportunity. For them, this is spring, the start of abundance, a time of flourishing, reproduction, expansion. They do not mourn, they thrive. And through their thriving, the cycle of the earth continues without interruption. When you picture your body as a garden, the imagery shifts. It is no longer only decline, but cultivation, a sowing of seeds, a bloom unseen, a harvest that feeds worlds beyond yourself. The invisible garden is not one of sorrow, but of inevitability. It reminds you that your life has always been shared, always interconnected, and that in the end you return to where you began, a participant in the great web of growth, change, and renewal. So, as you rest now, imagine this hidden flowering, microbes expanding like constellations across the night of the body, a quiet bloom that transforms you into soil, into sustenance, into continuation. The colors of goodbye fade, and in their place, this unseen growth begins, a garden blooming in stillness, preparing the ground for the arrival of larger architects, and soon those architects will arrive. Wings and mandibles, compound eyes and restless flight, creatures drawn to the bloom, ready to weave the next chapter of transformation. A body does not wait for outside hands to begin its transformation. Long before soil organisms arrive in full force, before insects trace their paths across skin, the change begins within. It begins with chemistry, with enzymes already present, already active, shifting their purpose as soon as life ceases to hold them in balance. Enzymes are proteins, small machines folded into precise shapes. In life, they are caretakers of energy, turning food into fuel, shaping molecules into structures, protecting balance at every level. In death, their mission changes, no longer controlled, no longer directed, they turn inward. They begin to dissolve the very tissues they once preserved. This inward dissolution is called autolysis, a word that means self-digestion, not a feeding from outside, but a quiet collapse from within. Imagine a woven tapestry pulled thread by thread until patterns blur. That is how autolysis moves through the body. It begins in the cells. Each cell carries enzymes sealed in small compartments called lysosomes. In life, these compartments are guarded, their contents tightly held. At death, with no energy to maintain boundaries, the walls weaken. Lysosomes break open, spilling enzymes across the cell. Proteins, once destined for food or repair, now encounter the cell's own scaffolding, its own walls, its own organelles. They cut, they cleave, they dismantle. The first places to feel this unraveling are the organs most rich in enzymes. The pancreas, for instance, which in life releases powerful digestive tools to break food into absorbable parts. In death, those same tools remain potent, but with no food to meet, they turn on the tissue that holds them. The pancreas begins to soften, its own power undoing it from the inside. The liver follows, rich with enzymes, dense with activity, even in life. Here too, the boundaries dissolve, and tissues begin to blur. If you could shrink yourself and wander inside, you might see the sharp edges of cells softening, as though their walls had melted into mist. This is not a sudden collapse, but a steady, creeping unwinding. Proteins lose their structure, lipids spread, membranes leak. The body once depended on order, but now entropy spreads like water through dry sand. Autolysis does not require outside assistance. It is entirely self-driven, a final act written into the chemistry of life itself. This makes it both haunting and poetic, that every living system carries within it the seeds of its own dissolution. Consider how frost spreads across a window pane. At first, small patterns appear, crystalline and sharp. Then, slowly, the shapes grow, branching and overlapping, until the whole surface is veiled. Autolysis is similar, spreading cell to cell, organ to organ, a frost of unraveling chemistry. This process is invisible from the outside at first. Skin may appear unchanged, muscles still firm, yet beneath, the cellular landscape is transforming. If you could hold a microscope over tissue hours after death, you would see outlines fading, details vanishing, clarity turning to haze. The identity of each cell dissolves into a common pool. Scientists can trace autolysis with staining techniques. They watch how enzymes break proteins into fragments, how DNA strands begin to cut themselves into pieces. Even memory, at the molecular level, begins to scatter. There is no malice in this. It is not destruction in the sense of violence. It is the natural chemistry of molecules seeking balance, breaking into smaller, more stable parts. What once was complex becomes simple again. What once was order becomes freedom. This unraveling also sets the stage for everything that follows. Without autolysis, bacteria and fungi would find the body harder to enter. Autolysis softens tissues, opens pathways, releases nutrients into spaces microbes can reach. In this way, it is the first invitation, a quiet unlocking of doors for other forms of life to step through. You can think of it as a house slowly unfastening itself, hinges loosening, walls cracking, windows opening. Once secure and sealed, now open to the outside world. There comes a moment when the body, softened by its inward unraveling, no longer belongs only to itself. The environment steps in. Soil, air, and fire extend their hands, shaping the body's final journey into the cycles of earth. Consider burial first. When a body enters the ground, it is surrounded by silence that holds no judgment. Soil becomes the medium of return. The weight of earth presses lightly upon the form, enclosing it in darkness, shielding it from the play of light and wind. But within this darkness, transformation does not pause, it changes rhythm. In the soil, oxygen becomes scarce. Without it, some organisms retreat while others awaken. Anaerobic bacteria thrive here, flourishing where air cannot reach. Their work is slow, releasing gases, acids, and compounds that paint the soil with chemical change. The body softens. Further, tissues breaking down into simpler substances, mingling with minerals already present. Moisture in the ground plays its role too. In damp soil, decomposition accelerates, each drop carrying dissolved molecules outward, feeding roots and microscopic communities. In dry soil, the opposite occurs. The body may desiccate, tissues drying like parchment, slowing the process into stillness that can last years. Temperature also shapes the pace. Warmth quickens, cold delays. In frozen soil, transformation can nearly pause, preserving form for decades. In hot earth, breakdown becomes swift, an accelerated surrender to the elements. Over time, burial turns the body into part of the ground itself. Proteins unravel into nitrogen that feeds grass. Calcium from bones strengthens soil and later enters plants. Even the smallest fragments of carbon rejoin the atmosphere as gases rise invisibly through the layers of earth. Yet burial is not the only path. Imagine the body left to the open air. Here, wind, sun, and rain each claim their share. Exposure is a dialogue with the sky. Air allows oxygen to reach every surface, speeding oxidation. Tissues dry in the open, skin hardening, sometimes forming a natural mummification. Sunlight adds its heat, bleaching surfaces, breaking molecular bonds with ultraviolet rays. Rain washes across the body, leaching nutrients into ground or stream, carrying particles outward in tiny rivers. Scavenging animals may also join in this setting, their presence part of the open-air story. Birds may take strands of hair for nests. Insects follow scent and warmth, contributing to transformation with their own cycles of feeding and growth. Each small interaction threads the body into wider networks of life. In desert air, desiccation dominates. The body may remain intact in form, though emptied of softness, preserved as a figure of salt and shadow. In humid air, moisture allows faster microbial growth, and tissues vanish more quickly into the cycles of weather and soil. There is also the body given to water. Submersion changes everything. In lakes, rivers, or oceans, buoyancy carries the form weightless for a time. Water cools, slows, and at the same time reshapes the body's fate. In fresh water, skin softens, swelling with absorption, then sloughs as layers separate. Bacteria flourish differently here, some feeding on the abundance of dissolved organic matter. Fish and aquatic invertebrates may join the process, nibbling edges, scattering fragments. In salt water, the transformation bends toward preservation in some places. Salt draws fluids outward, hardening tissues. Yet at the same time, the ocean is filled with creatures ready to weave the body into its endless food web. Crabs, shrimp, and scavenging fish carve pathways through tissue. Bacteria bloom, releasing gases that may carry the body upward, floating before sinking once more. Over weeks and months, bones settle into sediment. Mineral-rich water flows across them, sometimes replacing organic parts with stone-like crystals. In this way, remnants may linger as fossils of a sort, reminders pressed into geology itself. And then there is fire, the swiftest of transformations. Cremation is not a slow blending, but an accelerated release. Flame consumes water first, steam rising in invisible threads. Then organic matter ignites, carbon burning away into smoke. Proteins break into gases, lipids flare. What once held shape collapses into glowing fragments of bone. The chemistry of flame reduces the body to mineral ash. Calcium compounds, traces of phosphorus, tiny amounts of metal elements, once carried in blood. These ashes are light enough to scatter, to drift with the wind, to sink into water, to mix into soil. In moments, the body becomes part of the air itself, part of the breath of the world. Though fire is fast, it does not erase, it changes. The form of presence. Ash contains nutrients too, and when placed in earth, it feeds soil life. When scattered into the ocean, it joins the mineral balance of tides. When carried by wind, it spreads across landscapes, microscopic grains, eventually settling into distant ground. Each path, soil, air, water, or fire, offers its own rhythm of return. Each pathway is shaped by environment, by temperature, by elements, yet all converge on the same truth. The body that once held you is not lost, only rearranged. What is striking is how the environment does not resist, but receives. Soil absorbs, water carries, flame frees, air disperses. These are not endings, but continuations in new directions. The molecules of muscle and bone reappear in grass, in tide, in stone, in breath. The matter of life is not gone, but exchanged, like a melody played in different keys. Cultures have long chosen among these pathways: burial beneath sacred, ground cremation by flame beneath the sky, burial at sea, releasing the body into tides. Each practice reflects not only science but belief, a way of seeing the relationship between body and earth. But beneath the layers of ritual, the science remains the same: soil, chemistry, water, salinity, oxygen, and flame. Each element shaping a different transformation, yet all returning the same matter to the same cycles. To imagine this is to see the body as part of the earth's breath. Every path dissolves into patterns already ancient, already practiced for billions of years. The body is not alone in this. Every leaf, every bird, every creature returns in similar ways. Transformation is not yours alone, but the rhythm of all life. And as the body fades into soil, into tide, into flame, into air, what remains is not absence, but presence scattered. A presence diffused into roots, winds, currents, stones. The story of the body is the story of the earth's hands, always receiving, always reshaping, always carrying what was into what will be. But even after this surrender to earth and element, another question remains. What of the memory carried within bones, within structures, within traces that last longer than flesh? What of the record etched into the skeleton itself? What remains when softness is gone? What endures when skin, muscle, and organ return to the soil? It is the skeleton, a scaffolding of mineral and memory, standing as the final witness of a body's existence. Bone is more than stone within you. It is alive in life built of cells that repair, reshape, and grow. But once life departs, those cells fall silent, leaving behind a structure woven from calcium, phosphate crystals, and strands of collagen. Together they form a substance, both strong and delicate, dense enough to last centuries, yet fragile enough to crumble under rain or acid. Imagine the rib cage, still curved like an echo of breath, the skull, a vault that once held thought, the femur solid as a pillar, carrying the weight of every step you ever took. Each bone is a story in shape and density, a record of how you lived, how you moved, what stresses shaped your frame. Over time, the environment begins its conversation with this mineral library. In the soil, water seeps slowly, carrying minerals in and out. Acids in earth dissolve calcium, hollowing bone from within. In alkaline soil, the opposite may occur. Minerals deposit, hardening the skeleton until it resembles chalk or stone. Rainfall, pH, and temperature write their script upon bone. In some landscapes, bones crumble in only decades, dissolving to dust that merges with clay. In others, they may last millennia bleached, but intact, waiting like silent sculptures for eyes that may one day discover them. Exposure to air leads to weathering. Sunlight cracks bone as heat expands, and cool nights contract, splitting the surface into fine fissures. Wind-blown sand abrades the edges until once sharp contours blur. Rainwater leaves stains of iron, or manganese painting surfaces with dark streaks. In forests, roots reach down, wrapping through rib and pelvis, weaving bone into living wood. The chemistry of root exudates slowly alters minerals, staining or etching, binding bone into soils. Growing fabric. In deserts, dryness preserves, but sand scours, turning bone pale, polished, and brittle under endless wind. Water tells another story. Submerged bones are visited by currents, by the chemistry of salt or fresh water. In rivers, tumbling movement rounds edges, smoothing them like pebbles. In the ocean, minerals can replace the original crystal structure, fossilizing bone into rock-like permanence. Or the opposite may happen. Seawater, rich in carbon dioxide, dissolves calcium away, leaving fragile ghosts of structure that collapse into silt. Sometimes, in rare circumstances, fossilization occurs. Bone buried in sediment may gradually transform as mineral-rich water replaces its original structure, atom by atom. What was once living tissue becomes stone, exact in shape, but no longer bone in substance. Such fossils may last millions of years, bearing witness not only to individual lives, but to species long vanished. Even before fossilization, bones hold chemical memories. Traces of carbon, nitrogen, strontium, and oxygen remain locked within their structure. From these, science can read diet, migration, even climate. The ratios of isotopes tell whether you ate plants or meat, whether you drank water from coastal rivers or inland wells. In this way, bone is not silent at all. It whispers to those who listen, telling stories across centuries. But time is always the sculptor. Bones in acidic soil dissolve almost entirely, leaving no trace of skeleton, only voids in earth where they once lay. In alkaline caves, bones may be preserved as though sleeping, calcified by dripping minerals that coat them in protective stone. In peat bogs, chemistry of tannins can stain bones dark, brown, halting bacterial activity and creating strange preservation where even soft tissues may persist. The skeleton does not decay in uniform rhythm. Small bones, porous and light, vanish first. Finger bones, ribs, vertebrae dissolve faster. Larger, denser bones, like femur, pelvis, and teeth, endure longest. Teeth, especially coated in enamel, are the most durable of all. They may survive long after the rest of the body has turned to dust, small ivory fragments persisting like final punctuation marks in the earth. Archaeologists often uncover only fragments, a piece of jaw, a tooth, a shard of skull. Yet even these hold enormous information. Microscopic lines in teeth reveal stresses of childhood hunger or illness. Tiny fractures in bone reveal labor injuries or disease. Each fragment is a syllable in the language of bones, waiting to be read. Bones also remember age. In life, bone is constantly remodeled, cells breaking and rebuilding. In death, this process ceases, leaving markers. The fusion of growth plates in long bones speaks of youth or adulthood. The wear of joints marks years of motion. Even the angle of ribs shifts across decades, offering clues to the length of a life lived. Still, bones are not invulnerable. They are patient, yes, but not eternal. Wind, water, soil, fire, and time each carry the skeleton toward disappearance. One path is gradual, crumbling to dust. Another is sudden in fire, where heat above 800 degrees Celsius reduces bone to brittle ash. Even then, fragments of calcium phosphate remain unburned entirely, holding their crystalline silence. And yet, in all this transformation, there is beauty. Bone does not resist the earth. It participates, dissolving into soil, enriching it with calcium for plants, fragmenting into rivers where tiny particles nourish aquatic life, fossilizing into stone where shapes carry forward into deep time. Think of it, a skeleton buried in volcanic ash may endure long enough for mountains to rise and fall, for oceans to open and close, long enough for future eyes to hold it and imagine the life it once supported. In that sense, bone is both fragile and eternal, both fleeting and monumental. Even your own bones, should they one day return to earth, will follow these possibilities. Dissolution into soil, fossilization into stone, weathering in air, preservation in dryness, or scattering by water. Each pathway speaks the same language of exchange, matter becoming matter once more. The skeleton is not only a structure, but a storybook. Every groove, every ridge, every line of wear is a sentence. Every mineral within is a word. And though the language may take patience to learn, it is written clearly for those who know how to listen. And still, even after bones have told their stories, even after they dissolve, or fossilize, or crumble to fragments, something lingers beyond structure. What of the unseen traces, the molecular threads, the invisible codes that once guided the making of flesh and bone alike? What of the language, not etched in calcium, but written in a deeper script? Every atom within you has traveled across billions of years to arrive here. Your body is not only yours, but a collection of elements borrowed from the cosmos. Hydrogen forged at the dawn of the universe. Carbon and oxygen born in the cores of stars. Iron that once flowed in the hearts of supernova. Each particle inside you carries a history older than Earth itself. In life, these atoms were organized into intricate patterns of cells and tissues. Now released, they wander again, rejoining the great circulation of matter. A carbon atom that once rested in your rib may drift into soil, feeding a root. That same atom may climb through leaves, enter the air as a breath of carbon dioxide, and then travel on winds across oceans. Months later, it may sink into the lungs of a whale or a bird in flight, or return again to human form in another time, another place. Water that once flowed through your veins is no different. Those molecules disperse into soil moisture, rivers, and clouds. Each drop carries memory of your body's rhythms, yet no drop remains confined. Evaporation lifts water upward into sky. Condensation gathers it into rain. The rain falls onto fields, mountains, deserts. Each fall is a continuation, a migration, a never-ending journey. Minerals from your bones take slower paths. Calcium dissolves into groundwater, enriching soil. Plants draw it upward, through their roots, weaving it into their stems and seeds. Creatures eat those plants, carrying your calcium into their own bodies, building new bones, new shells, new teeth. Thus, what was once your skeleton may someday form the beak of a bird, the antlers of a deer, or the sturdy stalk of a sunflower. Even the air you exhaled in your final moments lingers in atmosphere, mingling endlessly. Air is never still, never permanent. Each breath dilutes into currents that circle the globe. A single molecule of oxygen once carried in your blood may one day be drawn into the lungs of a child yet unborn, or into the spiracles of an insect hidden beneath desert sand. Nothing is lost, everything moves. This cycle is not bound to Earth alone. Some atoms, lifted by chance into the highest layers of atmosphere, may drift outward, escaping gravity. A fragment of your body carried as gas may wander into the cold void of space. There it may drift for centuries, drawn eventually into cometary ice or into the dust clouds that form new stars. One day such atoms may blaze within the heart of a sun, radiating light across new worlds. Think of it, the universe recycles endlessly. Stars collapse, scatter their elements, and from that, scattering new stars are born. From those stars, planets form oceans, gather life arises, and from life consciousness awakens, able to wonder at its own origins. You are part of this rhythm, inseparable from it. What ends for you personally does not end for your matter. At the atomic level, permanence is an illusion. An atom of nitrogen does not die. An atom of iron does not vanish. They only change companions, shifting from one molecule to another, from one structure to another. Your body is a temporary constellation of atoms held together for decades, then released back into circulation. Like beads from a necklace, breaking apart the pieces, scatter, yet the beads themselves remain whole, waiting to form new patterns. In soil decomposition enriches ecosystems. Microbes feed on proteins, converting them into nutrients that sustain plants. Fungi weave threads through the ground, breaking down complex molecules into simpler forms. Worms turn matter into fertile earth, reshaping what was once body into food for roots and seeds. Life multiplies from what you release, and the cycle continues. In water, the process is different. Nutrients released from tissue drift into lakes or oceans where algae consume them. Tiny plankton bloom, feeding fish, which feed larger fish, which feed birds, mammals, and eventually people. In this way, molecules once inside you may join a chain of lives stretching forward without end. The boundaries between self and world dissolve. Even fire participates in transformation. If your matter meets flame, molecules leap into atmosphere as vapor and ash. Carbon joins sky as gas, minerals fall as dust to ground. This is not destruction, but dispersal. Nothing disappears, everything only changes place. Fire writes your body into air, into soil, into unseen layers of atmosphere. Each pathway is different, but the truth remains the same. Matter is not lost, energy is not lost. Both shift, circulate, and return in forms beyond recognition. This is not only science, but poetry written in the language of physics and chemistry. The poetry of conservation, of transformation, of return. It is strange to think that some of your atoms may once have belonged to other beings. A calcium atom in your teeth may once have been part of a coral reef dissolved in seawater and taken up by your ancestors' food. An iron atom in your blood may once have resided in a meteorite falling to Earth in ancient times. A carbon atom in your skin may once have cycled through a fern in the age of dinosaurs. You have always been connected, always shared, and so the story continues beyond you. After release, your matter does not vanish into silence, but participates in new lives, new worlds. A child playing in sunlight may breathe atoms that once moved through you. A tree swaying in wind may grow taller because of minerals once carried in your bones. A bird may sing with muscles built from proteins, nourished by what was once your form. You live onward, not in memory alone, but in substance. The earth is patient with these exchanges. It gathers, scatters, recombines endlessly the soil. You return to is ancient holding particles from countless generations before you. The air above has been breathed by every living creature that has ever walked this world. The water that cycles now is the same water that once filled seas. In the earliest days of life, you are part of this continuity, inseparable, eternal in motion, if not in form. Even stars themselves are not exempt. They, to die, collapse and scatter their matter. Their elements drift into space, condensing again to form new suns, new planets, new possibilities for life. This cosmic recycling is not different from what happens to you, only larger, slower, grander in scale. The same physics, the same inevitability, the same return to beginning. What may feel like an ending is instead a release into this rhythm. You are not erased, but rewritten. Your atoms continue their wandering, forming new combinations, joining new stories. Each pathway is a verse in the long poem of existence. There is comfort here, to know that the smallest pieces of you will persist, reshaped, renewed. To know that even after your body dissolves, something of you remains circulating through soil, air, water, and star. You were never separate, never isolated, always part of a whole larger than yourself. Rest then in this truth. You are stardust, once again, and though your form may fade, your matter will continue. Your atoms will speak in new languages. Your particles will write new stories. For the cycle does not end here. It carries forward into eternity, a river of matter flowing without pause. And if you listen with imagination, you may sense the next question arising as natural as breath. If matter is eternal, if atoms wander and transform, then what of the energy carried within them? What of the unseen spark that once animated the pattern of your form? Where does that radiant current go when the body rests? There is no final page in this story, only continuation. The body you carried was one verse in an unbroken poem written across stars, oceans, soils, and skies. Through the chapters, you have walked the pathways of change, from the hush of stillness to the work of soil, to the language of bones, and finally to the wide horizon of the cosmos. Each step has shown that endings are never endings at all. They are passages, transformations, migrations of matter and energy into new shapes, new songs, and now as the story rests, you too may rest, knowing that you are part of this larger, weaving every atom, every breath, every spark within you flows onward, returning, renewing, rejoining the whole. Close your eyes and imagine yourself dissolving into that great rhythm, your particles, carried by wind, by water, by light, itself traveling beyond sight, beyond measure, forever part of the universes. Embrace them. Journey is never over, it only changes form, and you are always within it, always stardust once again.